Today we're going to be talking about bringing back prison penal colonies because the expense ratio of individuals in prison across the nation on median cost is $65,000. And the United States expends $80 billion a year to imprison 1.2 million people. We have to reduce the cost, and this is still on trend with pretty much all the other stuff on increasing household net free cash flow. And the reason we have to reduce prison costs is because states need to invest into infrastructure to manage the slide that we're on as far as that. And the only way to do that is to take costs down. The only way to do that is to pick the people who are the least useful. We got $80 billion a year across the nation, and we need to find a penal colony to put them in. Is it intended to be comfortable? No, it's still technically prison. There's not much point of that. Right now, the average inmate has 68 square foot of living space the majority of their day. And you're going to get more square footage, and we're going to get lower cost. We need to find a place that's already in the United States, that's already easier to acquire. And this realistically only comes down to a couple of places. That would be the island of St. Croix in the U.S. Virgin Islands. The population of the island is approximately 42,000 people. It's a large island with low population density and has 25,000 homes. You're approximately like 2.5 people per household. The island's large enough to function as a prison colony. It has enough infrastructure to function as a prison colony. And it has enough economic potential to pay for itself as a prison colony. Roughly, on the low end, it's going to take about 20 to 25 billion to eminent domain the island. There are some things that you don't have to eminent domain, and get to that. One thing that you don't have to eminent domain is there is an oil refinery process plant on St. Croix. It has not been profitable. But if the island were to function as a penal colony, it needs to return its own value to basically not be a burden to the United States government. Minimum payment laws and minimum wage are different for prisoners. We're not really going to sell them on this because there are a lot of states that will jump on dumping their prisoners. But you need to maintain the functioning of the refinery. And beyond that, you'd eminent domain everybody out. And you don't actually want to interact with the prisoners to really any degree. There are prisoners in the system that are doctors and nurses assistants and PAs and physicians. Basically, you would dump 1.2 million people, probably closer to 1 million, on the island, jump the population from 41,000 to 1 million. And they can fall in on the homes, they can fall in on pretty much everything available. Things that you would need to take to basically ensure it continues to function as a penal colony is you'd have to control the ports, which that's for unloading and loading of petroleum products. There's not really much else you would need to do. You would just force them to form a functioning society. The gangs will still be present, and the gangs will likely divide up the island accordingly. But you could, for capital cost improvement of, we'll just say 25 billion to buy the island, you have a permanent prison for the entire nation. You've lost the need for guards. It's pretty much the prisoner's responsibility to survive and find a way to function in a system that would be closer to society than what they're already doing. So you could argue that you're training them how to be useful to society and not break society, because gang violence will likely prune individuals that are disruptive to even their operations. You're going to basically re-incentivize them to their professions, or they're going to have to find one, and we don't have to pay for guards. Food and medical care, specifically like medications and stuff like that, it's tricky, but you'd have to absorb those costs into the operations of the refinery with an agreement with the refinery of Lime Tree. which I don't even know if they own it anymore. Lime Tree's profits at minimum incarceration wages is going to be significantly better than what they were paying people. As you establish that as a stable business model, you could bankroll your food, water, supplies, etc. There are some things you would have to remove to keep this island functioning as a penal colony. And the things you would have to remove is gasoline storage tanks all across the island, minus the refinery, which seems counterintuitive. But you don't want them to have energy storage capable of exiting the island. Basically, gasoline would not be allowed to be transported to the island, and you would remove all boats and all cars, things like that, because there's going to be some backwoods engineer who can slap together a Chevy 5.3 liter with a prop and leave the island. To the largest degree possible, remove internal combustion engines, remove gasoline, and hand over the island. There would be too much logistical problems with doing, basically trying to pick people up on their day of court or day to be released. You'd have to keep minimum jails at the county level, and as people are arrested and taken and ferried back and forth between this island, you would want them to be returned 1 year before their sentence ends. They return to jail, and then that's just to reduce operations costs on that. Beyond that, it would function like any other freestanding economy. You would want to front load your engineers into the island to basically assume operations. And then you want to front load your previously licensed individuals, your doctors, your medics, your et cetera, et cetera. And that would be to maintain the infrastructure that's there. The U.S. Bureau of Land Management kills plenty of horses every year for population control. Round those up, drop them on the island, and then the island has the American Express stable system of transporting things that's needed across the island. That really isn't that big. You could severely reduce the operations cost of the entire nation on the Bureau of Prisons, individual states' prisons, for the majority of those incarcerated. You wouldn't want to, send out your cartel leaders. You wouldn't want to send out your terrorist bombers like at the Boston Marathon. You wouldn't want to send like your supermax in Colorado. It has pretty much got to be maintained. Beyond that, there needs to be like a minimum. Beyond that, there needs to be a minimum time where you have to be at the island for it to be feasible for you to be detained there financially. That's probably going to be like the 4-year mark. And then your long timers are pretty much going to build your stabilized economy and systems on the island. You could build this, and what you want to do is you basically want to drop everybody, state by state in batches, but you want to leave the shot collars of prisons in the prisons. And then you want to drop off all of your shot collars at the end. And this would take, months, probably closer to years. And that would effectively create the shot caller's previous level of authority versus the now newly established functioning system. You want to create a conflict and power structure within the prison system of the penal colony so that it's already destabilized to an extent when the shot callers arrive. And that'll create enough internal conflict that no one group really needs to be in single control. After this, the look of this system will be largely extremely uncomfortable. So you're going to have a very strong disincentivization of going to prison, because the saying will be, you're going to Croy, or something to that effect of, where you're going is worse than where you are. Yeah, you're not gonna get visitation. Like, we don't care. And a lot of other countries are also suffering from overflow rates in their prisons. And you could probably sell access to the penal colony under those grounds and probably get a positive net return on the penal colony. If we're spending 65,000 per inmate, how much is Australia paying, New Zealand paying, Great Britain, you know? And then you have Spanish-speaking countries that would probably jump on it without an issue. Penal colonies worked. They've worked in the past. They've worked in history. It's not like we're rounding up people this time for penal colonies over dumb things. Like, we have plenty of murderers and things to that effect. That would be one way to save the country. Probably $60 billion in a year. Is it going to fix everything? No, but saving come in stages. And if we're going to have to inflict austerity to basically stabilize the U.S. budget, we might as well be on the people who've already chosen a life that has caused their austerity. And they can pay the price for that, so the rest of us don't have to. Alrighty. So this is how the U.S. can save money by reinstituting the St. Croix penal colony and possibly make a profit. Probably not, but possibly. What do you guys think? Am I Dr. Evil? Am I a nut job? Or am I just the unapologetic utilitarian? Tell me in the comments.